The cafe in downtown Chicago carried the soft hum of everyday life, filled with the low murmur of conversations, the clinking of cups, and the steady hiss of the espresso machine behind the counter. Near the window, a single dad sat quietly with his young daughter, helping her stir sugar into her hot chocolate while occasionally checking his phone. His clothes were simple and slightly worn, but his attention never drifted far from the little girl sitting across from him. She smiled often, clearly feeling safe in his presence. A few tables away, a well-dressed man in an expensive suit leaned back in his chair, watching them with a smirk. At first it was just a glance, then a whisper to his companion, followed by a chuckle that grew louder than necessary. Before long, his voice carried across the cafe. He made a careless remark about the father's appearance, loud enough for others to hear. A few customers looked up uncomfortable, but quickly returned to their drinks, choosing silence over involvement. The father didn't react. He simply continued talking softly to his daughter, asking her about school, her friends, and the drawings she had brought along. His calmness seemed to irritate the man even more. The bully leaned forward, raising his voice again, this time directing his words more openly. He mocked the man's clothes, questioned how someone like him could afford to be there, and laughed as if the moment were entertainment. The little girl's smile faded slightly. She glanced at her father, confusion in her eyes, but he met her gaze with reassurance. "It's okay," he said quietly, his tone steady and warm. "Finish your drink." His voice carried a quiet authority that contrasted sharply with the noise coming from across the room, but the man wasn't finished. He stood up, straightening his jacket, and slowly walked toward their table. Each step felt deliberate, drawing more attention. Conversations around the cafe began to fade as people sensed tension building. The air shifted heavy with anticipation. The bully stopped just a few feet away, looking down at the father with a grin that carried both arrogance and challenge. "Hey," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "I'm talking to you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the father gently set his cup down. He reached over and moved his daughter's chair slightly back, placing himself between her and the man without making it obvious. His movements were calm, almost casual, but precise. He stood up slowly, meeting the man's gaze for the first time. There was no anger in his eyes, no fear, just a quiet, controlled focus. Something about the way he stood changed the atmosphere instantly. His posture straightened, his shoulders squared, and his presence seemed to fill the space in a way that hadn't been noticeable before. It wasn't aggression, it was control. The kind that comes from experience, from discipline, from knowing exactly what to do without needing to prove anything. The bully hesitated for a fraction of a second, sensing the shift but not fully understanding it. Around them, the cafe had gone nearly silent. What had started as casual mockery was no longer just a scene. It had become a moment charged with something deeper, something unexpected, and for the first time, it was clear that the quiet man standing there was not who he appeared to be. For a brief second, the bully tried to maintain his confidence, forcing a laugh as if nothing had changed. He reached out, attempting to shove the father's shoulder, expecting the same passive reaction he had seen moments earlier. But the instant his hand moved forward, everything shifted. The father reacted without hesitation, his motion smooth and precise. He deflected the arm, effortlessly stepping slightly to the side in a way that seemed almost practiced, almost instinctive. The movement was so quick that many in the cafe barely registered what had happened. One moment the bully was advancing, the next he was off balance, his confidence cracking. The father didn't strike wildly or lose control. Every action he took was measured, minimal, and effective. Just enough to stop the aggression without escalating it further. His focus never wavered, his breathing steady. His eyes calmed the bully. Now frustrated and embarrassed, tried again, this time more aggressively. But it only made things worse for him. The father anticipated the movement before it fully happened, redirecting him with controlled force. Within seconds, the situation was completely reversed. The man who had been loud and dominant just moments ago was now stumbling, struggling to regain his footing under the quiet, unshakable presence of someone clearly trained far beyond ordinary experience. A cup rattled on a nearby table as someone gasped softly. No one stepped in, but everyone was watching now. The entire cafe had fallen into complete silence, as if time itself had slowed down to witness what was unfolding. The father maintained a careful distance, never overcommitting, never showing unnecessary aggression. It was clear he wasn't trying to hurt the man, only to stop him finally. With one last controlled movement, He neutralized the situation entirely, leaving the bully standing still, stunned and unsure of what to do next. There was no dramatic finish, no loud declaration. Just a quiet end to something that could have become much worse. The father stepped back, creating space, signaling that it was over his. Attention immediately shifted away from the man and back to his daughter. He adjusted his jacket slightly, as if resetting himself, and walked calmly to his seat. His daughter looked up at him, wide-eyed but safe, and he gave her a small, reassuring smile. "It's okay," he said softly again, as if nothing unusual had happened. The bully didn't say another word. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by a mixture of shock and realization. He glanced around, noticing the eyes on him. The silent judgment in the room. Without another attempt to speak, he turned and walked away. His steps no longer confident. His presence diminished. Gradually, the normal sounds of the cafe began to return. The quiet conversations, the clink of cups, the hum of machines, but the atmosphere had changed. People looked at the father differently, now with a kind of respect that hadn't been there before. Not because he had fought, but because he hadn't needed to prove anything beyond protecting what mattered. And as he sat there, calmly finishing his coffee while his daughter returned to her drink, it became clear to everyone watching that true strength isn't loud or showy. Sometimes it's quiet, controlled, and only revealed when absolutely necessary.